If traditional sleep advice doesn't work, because it usually doesn't, it's a completely different animal going to bed and waking up with ADHD, make your own version of a routine. You'll start to see how much different you feel and how much more in control of your symptoms that you are. Hello, truth tellers. Welcome back to the ADHD Scapegoat podcast, where we talk about everything ADHD and scapegoating. I'm Angie.
I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to talk about why sleep is a major issue for many ADHDers, as well as the connection between ADHD, sleep disorders, and CTPSD.
No, CPTSD.
CPTSD.
CP, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, thanks. This month we're going to be focusing on ADHD struggles that I've dealt with personally, as well as done a lot of work around supporting these particular struggles. And today, talking about struggling with sleep, I think the importance of that comes from, sleep is the first thing that I always know I need to address when I'm either supporting myself or supporting my kids or doing anything. And I mean, everyone needs sleep, but I think sometimes it's hard to realize that you're not getting enough sleep, or to realize that this is impacting you. Or sometimes, I used to think I only needed 5 hours of sleep and I felt really good, but I didn't realize what it was actually contributing to not having enough sleep. And I struggled with sleep my entire life, and I didn't really begin tracking or testing my sleep patterns until 7 to 10 years ago maybe. So here's some things that I've learned and we've both kind of worked with. So here's why here's why sleep is hard for ADHD brains. We struggle with transitions, so that includes winding down for sleep, especially if we're doing something we really enjoy right before bed. With our interest-based nervous system, we get locked in on something and we don't want to just cut it off to go to sleep. And I think obviously more so with the boys, because as adults you grow and you learn different tools, but they don't have other responsibilities and things, so you definitely notice that in kids a lot more. But I think it's the same for myself.
It's tricky to they have calming activities. Coloring is a calming activity, but it also becomes a bit of an obsession in I have to finish this picture. I want to do one more picture. Right. I do. So that kind of snowballs.
Right.
As well.
Sometimes it's just okay, yep, that worked, go to bed. And then some other days it's I need to do it just 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
Pushing the bedtime. But there's also time blindness and sleep procrastination. So, losing track of time and then suddenly realizing it's 3 a.m. Or I always think it kind of starts with maybe we get to dinner late, everything kind of gets backed up from the time the kids get home from school, whether it's work stuff, whatever it is, and then we back dinner up, so then everything else gets pushed back to bath time or different activities that the kids want to do. And then you still want to unwind, but for us, after we put the kids to bed, it's oh my gosh, it's already 9. Okay, we just have to go to sleep, because we don't realize that all of a sudden it's there. And it's not that we're not trying to keep on our routine, it's just sometimes naturally that's going to happen.
Sometimes it slips.
Yeah. The hyperfocus and the second wind is another issue. So catching a burst of energy late at night. For me, this shows up when I've had a really productive day and I've set myself up for the next day. I know exactly where I'm going to jump back into my work, and ADHD brains we never know, because our motivation is so up and down, we never know we're going to get that back. So there's like this idea that I don't want to waste this motivation because it might not be here tomorrow. And that's just what our brains do. So we have to, be aware that when we're doing that to ourselves, to like pause and be like, okay, you're going to be all right. You have yourself set up. You can stop now. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
no,
I have
go.
a question here. So, do you think you experience burnout because of that? Where
Yes.
it's like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to get this back tomorrow. Whereas you may be able to pick up on that momentum tomorrow if you leave off at a spot where you leave yourself some energy. So because
it's just a hard balance, because sometimes you actually do feel like, oh boy, I'm really tired. I need to stop. And you just have to, your body makes you stop. You start getting really exhausted or really frustrated. So, and then sometimes your energy will come back. You go to bed, sometimes we communicate to each other that's like, right after the boys go to bed, we're going to bed. I don't care what time it is. Like, we have to catch up. And then we feel better the next day and I can jump right back in.
Right.
Or, maybe we put all that effort in, we get woken up, 30 times and we still feel tired. So it's just a balancing act that like I think everybody deals with, but this consistent daily struggle along these items is how the ADHD brain is really working overtime. And then the last thing is rejection sensitivity and nighttime anxiety. So, overthinking social interactions before bed. I know I've talked to you before, like if we go and have a social interaction and I'm always like, oh my God, I think they hate me or whatever, or did I talk too much, or I'm, feeling all those things. And so you just kind of overthink it. And I made a rule a long time ago that, and I don't know if we did this together. I can't remember if I did it with you or I said you should do this because it's helping me. But like I won't check my email or scroll social media right before bed or like during like the wind down routine, because something could stress me out. Or I could like become emotionally overwhelmed, or, if an email comes in of something I have to do the next day and it wasn't already on my list, I can start to feel like pressure or stress to do something, which is not going to help me sleep. It usually for me, it makes me wake up multiple times in like this anticipation of like, oh, I'm not going to wake up to my alarm. I have to do this thing. So I get up way early or I wake up multiple times because I do that. So that's one of like my really hard rules about bedtime. Like if I'm on my phone, it's like playing like a mind relaxation game. It's not doing the other things. So some common ADHD sleep related struggles. And this is a really crazy fact that I remember when I first learned it, I was taken aback because I always knew I had sleep struggles. And then once we had kids, making sure we were like paying attention to their sleep and making sure they were getting enough sleep. But 60 to 80% of ADHDers struggle with sleep issues. And here's what makes it worse. Less sleep equals an increase in your ADHD symptom severity the next day. Our medication isn't as effective, which makes it harder for us to do our routines. And, if our medication's not working, we kind of lean on our behavioral therapies that we learn to help our symptom management. So we end up getting frustrated more easily, become forgetful, then we feel guilty for making mistakes. Then our emotions take over because we're tired. So maybe we drink caffeine or try to do something that will stimulate our brain, and then it gets too close to bedtime, and then here we go. The cycle's just a mess. So it is so imperative for ADHDers to get enough sleep because, everybody needs to get more sleep, but ADHDers literally, like, if if you're taking medication and you're doing all these things, and not getting enough sleep just removes those supports.
There's a noticeable difference when our boys don't get sleep. I
Right.
mean, and it's hard to explain a lot of these things. Like, you're an adult who has, a dozen plus years of experience with your ADHD.
Right. Since I've been diagnosed.
Since you've been diagnosed, and you understand that you may need to implement those coping mechanisms, or you understand those feelings that you're feeling of, like the frustration and feeling guilty about being forgetful or making mistakes. They don't necessarily understand that. They feel that something is off, or sometimes they don't feel it's off, and they're out. I use this loosely. They're out of control. They're not within
Right.
that. They're out of character. Just bouncing off the walls, not able to control their emotions, and
they really can't. Like, it's not their fault. They really can't.
Right. And that's something that, in all of our education about ADHD, especially for them, and what coping mechanisms we can implement. I remember before Wyatt's diagnosis, all we had was behavioral health.
Right.
And it was frustrating because everything that we were told or suggested to do, we were either already doing or had exhausted every version of that thing that they told us to do. And, we very quickly identified that sleep is a major contributor.
Right.
But just because you identify that it's contributing to, your ADHD symptoms, it's not easy to correct.
Right.
It's not.
You can't force.
You can't just make your kid go to bed 2 hours earlier,
Right.
or they're not going to fall asleep.
Right.
And they're going to get up at the same time. We have friends who have kids that are the same age as our kids, and we always joke, when we leave that scenario where we'll have dinner with friends and they'll be like, oh yeah, so and so gets up at like 8, and that's so early on the weekends, and we're like, our kids are up between 5 and 6 every single day. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
if it's Christmas, they're up at 4, but it's like, and when we tell our friends this,
They'll say, "Oh, they stayed up late. They'll sleep in." Yeah, right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, it
Nope.
happens all the time when we just went to my parents' house last weekend, and I let the boys stay up a little bit later, and because I knew I was going to deal with the consequences. But they said, "Oh, I love coming to Grandma and Grandpa's house because we get to stay up later." But it doesn't matter how late they stay up. They can stay up until 10 o'clock. They're still waking up at 5 o'clock.
Right.
And
you just have to
yeah.
prepare. I know. Well, so here's a couple different things that happen. So it's called delayed sleep phase syndrome. So ADHDers are more prone to like night owl tendencies, which means it's in all the science. It's all backed by science. Our sleep cycle is delayed by 90 minutes. So the sleep hormone melatonin that we naturally produce isn't released at the same time of day for non-ADHDers. And so you want to make sure you're doing things during the day to set yourself up for bedtime, like not drinking too much caffeine. Like I have a cutoff at like 2 p.m. Or like if you're taking stimulant medications to support your ADHD, you want to make sure that when you're doing the trial, you're paying attention to the time frames and if it's disrupting your sleep or how you need to move it around. And sometimes you need to move the timing to a little bit earlier, and sometimes you need to change the dose. But just paying attention to how, anything, if you're doing something different that day, okay, what did I do differently today? I couldn't fall asleep, and, make sure you're looking at it.
I want to just do a quick sidebar on that specifically on medication, and having something that didn't make sense to me at first, but now totally does. The boys have a wonderful doctor now that they both see the same doctor, and she has them. They take their medication at 3:00 every day in the afternoon, and at first I'm like, why would we give them a stimulant at 3:00? Aren't they going to be revved? But being off medication, what we learned, we're not doctors.
But a lot of trial.
A lot of trial. Yeah, but I mean, we saw a noticeable difference when they are on that medication that doesn't wear off until right before bedtime. If they don't have that, then it's like they're so out of control, like they don't know how to, like their body doesn't know what to do in those 3 or 4 hours before bedtime when they're off of that medication, that it makes it even harder for them to go to bed. Whereas having the stimulant wear off right before bedtime, like maybe the hour before bedtime, allows them to go, oh, okay, now it's time to shut down and, get in bed mode. That part is really confusing when you're first starting out on, the trials for ADHD meds, and really understanding why would that, it seems counterintuitive, but having a stimulant in your system until right before bed actually it's helped our boys. I'm sure that it's different for everyone, but that's really helped us.
And we'll do more on medication, I think. I know, obviously, like you said, we're not doctors, but we have a lot of experience working with these trials and understanding how each medication can differ for each person, and the way it kind of affects each person differently, because no ADHD person is the same, or symptoms show up the same. So it's a very tough thing to medicate, but like I said, we'll talk about that at different times. So because I think there's a lot of questions around medications. So, but okay, so another thing is restless leg syndrome and insomnia. So higher occurrence in ADHD brains is restless leg. It's common because it's part of the dopamine dysfunction in our brains, and insomnia is due to many things, but again, having no filter for our thoughts. So our racing thoughts make it hard to sleep soundly through the night, and a lot of times, falling asleep. There's sleep maintenance insomnia, so waking up frequently and struggling to fall back to sleep. And this was huge for me. I may not struggle to fall asleep. Some nights I do, but I need the TV on for background noise, or else I'll hear every single noise outside. But if I'll hear the house creaking, or like what happened just the other night. It was like hail, like it was kind of like icy sleet, just pelting the window at like 3 a.m. Woke me right up. But if I don't turn the TV on or have something on to help me fall asleep, to like drown out any of those other noises, I'll hear you, like even you breathing sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't
nerve.
go. But it's not your fault. It's just like I can always hear it. Then there's the CPTSD and nighttime hypervigilance added. It's difficulty feeling safe enough to fall asleep when you've struggled with trauma, complex trauma. And that's where my sleeping with the TV, or, listening to a Dateline podcast while I fall asleep, those kinds of things work for me. And noise machines during the day, like I listen to my brown noise to focus. So I don't find them as helpful during bedtime. For our boys, they do like a wave sound to help. I need the show on in the background, something I've, either watched 1,000 times, like Friends. It's comforting. I don't have to look at the screen, so I turn away from the light, and it's not like, super bright anyway, but I look away. Have my eyes closed. I can just hear it. Sounds familiar, and I'm able to fall asleep. I would like to get to the point where I don't do that, but if it's working now and allowing me to sleep, I'm good.
Is the light a key? I'm just
It can be.
For example, if there was a Friends podcast that just played the Friends episodes, just the audio, and you could put it on and then put your phone face down. You think that would be helpful?
Yep. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
All right.
You couldn't create it.
I mean, the light bothers me, and so that's why I'm asking.
That's why you have to wear your sleep mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all make sacrifices.
That's all right. Yeah. No.
And part of the thing we worked out when you noticed that if I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't fall back to sleep, or I would be up for like 2 or 3 hours and then maybe I would fall asleep for like 45 minutes or something, you are able to fall asleep very quickly. And even if you wake up in the middle of the night, you're able to go back to sleep most nights. So if the kids come in, you tell them to come to you so that I don't wake up and then I'm not able to fall back asleep, which is just such a loving, wonderful thing that you do that I'm always so grateful for.
We all make sacrifices.
Okay, so just a quick, showing how ADHD affects sleep from children all the way to adulthood. So the most prevalent sleep struggles for kids is the difficulty falling asleep, night terrors, or waking up frequently. This definitely is something we dealt with both of our kids, but night terrors for both of them in just little pockets of time. Like they'd have like a couple nights in a row where that would happen, but Wyatt used to sleepwalk and have no idea that like he came into our room or said anything, or he would just sit up and have no idea what's going on, and then it would, be really hard for him to go back to sleep. In the teen years, you have like increased night owl tendencies, homework that you need to do, procrastination. For me, during my teen years, I played sports year round, so I could have an away game or a practice or an event for like student activities council or something that I had to attend and I would be at, and just had to fit everything in. And then I want to say it was like my junior and senior year, we did like a morning gym class so I could have a study hall during the day. So I got up before school, did this like plyometrics gym class that was pretty intense, but there were a lot of athletes that didn't have study halls and had to leave school early for games and stuff, that we found that a better option and gave us at least some study hall time. So that helped a ton. But there definitely were nights where I just had to, either do homework on the bus on the ride back, and, and sometimes you can't, and you're like, well, maybe if I sleep for a little bit, then when I get home, I can do my homework, and it just pushes it back. But, and then on top of it, for me, due to the stress of living in my unsupportive household, I ended up drinking NyQuil almost nightly in my senior year of high school in order to fall asleep, because I wasn't diagnosed, had no medication or any behavioral tools or anyone talking to me about what was going on. So it just added another layer of like, I found a vice to help me. Into adulthood, work schedules tend to conflict with your natural sleep cycles, sleep deprivation. Obviously, we already talked up, it compounds all of your executive dysfunction issues, and parenthood obviously is a big one here for, everyone that has kids, but, the newborn stage is like every couple of hours. And if your medication's not going to work, you're all over the place. It's a massive and, if you're also you have ADHD and your kids have ADHD, you both aren't sleeping, and it just becomes a bigger mess. So we want to jump into some tools and strategies to improve sleep. So bedtime routines that work for us is making that wind down time, having that routine start the same time every night, and make it engaging. So if it's audio books, or on Spotify, we listen to sleep time stories, but if there's little things that they can fidget with, low energy hobbies, different things at bedtime. So every night at the same time, because even though our melatonin doesn't kick in till 90 minutes after a non-ADHDer, that routine is going to help support our body's rhythm of knowing this is time to go to sleep. Using visual timers or reminders, I have, like we've discussed, I have every phone alarm there is. We do an owl at night, don't we? Isn't it an owl?
Those crickets.
Is it crickets at night?
Yeah, it's crickets.
Okay, you're probably right. And then I found it really helpful to use Mel Robbins' sleep-wake routine. And she tells you to keep your phone out of reach so you're not tempted for that late night scroll. But then you also, when it's time to wake up, you have to actually get up out of bed to turn your alarm off. And so you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get yourself up out of bed. Try it. It really works. The second thing is regulating dopamine and melatonin naturally. So sunlight exposure in the morning, cutting screen time or using, blue light glasses or filters. Magnesium and other supplements may help. Our older one takes magnesium. Right now they both do melatonin too. So that's been helpful. Third thing is managing ADHD hyperactivity before bed. So some people really like brain dumping or like journaling to like release your thoughts. For me, I choose like coloring or playing a brain game, or, we've been doing like family board games that are, brain teasers, but it's like calming. Some sort of puzzle that like organizes your brain a little bit. It's kind of, it will help me unwind. The brain dump journaling just gets me, oh, this thing, this idea, and then I'm up later. So, but it might work for some people. So I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that does not work for me. And then gentle movement like yoga or stretching or something like calming. I prefer a foot massage, which I'm so lucky that I get almost every night from my wonderful husband here. So it's just kind of being, we have that one shoulder massager that, if we're just having like we're both at desks at, different chunks of the day, super helpful just to like calm your body and relax. And then a lot of the sleep tight stories or the, Koala Moon, that they do little meditation practices when they start telling the bedtime story, where they talk to you about releasing your body and, let your heels sink into your bed and stuff like that. Really huge. The fourth thing is addressing CPTSD-related sleep struggles. So creating a safe, comfortable sleep environment. And I've really done a lot of work on listening to my body and not forcing myself to like sit or lay in discomfort. I know that sounds weird to some people, but do you find yourself sitting in an uncomfortable position and then finally you're like, oh, why was I sitting like that? I really listen to my body now and don't just force myself into a spot, because I don't know, like it's a very weird, please people tell me if this is something that you deal with, but like you just like sit in a spot and you don't even realize you're uncomfortable until you go to move and you're like, why was I sitting like that? Like I really try to focus on like, is this comfortable or is this hurting me, or do I need another pillow? And just like allowing myself the space to make that choice was something I had to learn.
I do it and I'm conscious that it's uncomfortable. But I'm usually like focused on something. Our kids do it too. Mm-hmm. Where they'll get all of a, I mean, even at the dinner table, how many times has Wyatt gotten up and walked around, limped around because his leg was asleep, and we're like, well, why were you sitting like that? You're, stand up if you want to.
Remove your leg from under you.
Yeah.
He always kind of sits with one leg under him. But practicing, different nervous system regulation techniques, whether it's like breath work or doing those sleep time meditations where you're kind of relaxing your body. And weighted blankets are insane. I remember first, hearing studies around weighted blankets and how they support, and I was immediately like, oh, that sounds awesome. And then we got one for Wyatt, and then we got one for me, and it's just like this hug of relaxation, and it's awesome. And now both the kids use it, and I use it. And so the last thing is ADHD-friendly sleep aids. Now, again, that could be different noise machines, sleep apps with guided meditations. And the reason we really like the Koala Moon one is because they have an Australian accent. And so I don't know why, it's just so much more relaxing. And it's her voice is just, it's not harsh at all. So, and then, like we said, some of those supplements, melatonin, magnesium, and sleep medication is also something, and, sometimes you need to consider it. And, we all take small doses of, all the ADHDers in our house take small doses of sleep medication to support healthy sleep patterns and, get us into that mode. So it's just something to talk with your doctor about if you're, you've exhausted all these other options and you just still need some help. So, some closing thoughts on this. I think sleep struggles are real, but it's not your personal failure. And I think sometimes when you're not paying attention to the sleep, it's harder for you to manage or to understand what's going on during the day. And really pausing. If something's off, be like, how much sleep did I get? Or, did I get enough sleep? Or did I wake up a bunch? And we've communicated that with each other and our kids so much that they go to it first. Oh, I want to see how much sleep I got. And, even when they don't get sleep, if they say, oh, I woke up at 4:40, but like I laid in bed until 6, we're like, oh no. And we don't shame them, but we're like, oh, how you feeling? Okay, you didn't get a ton of sleep last night, so today, here's what our plan is going to be. Go ahead.
That's one thing that you didn't really touch on was like really charting sleep and how we do that with the boys. Like you have a sleep app on your phone. For a while you wore your Apple Watch. The boys both wear Fitbits, and so we track their sleep, and you actually chart it. You have a resource that you chart their sleep, and we're able to then take that to their doctor and say, this is what their sleep has been. I mean, every doctor you've taken that to has been like, oh my God, nobody does this. This is amazing. It just helps show where there's lower efficacy on medications, where there's struggle.
You're able to actually hypothesize what's going on when that happens.
Especially when we were doing like mainly behavioral health, but when we were doing the ADHD med trials, we really adhered to that worksheet that you had where we would chart their sleep every day, but then also we would mark down, were there any struggles, what time did it happen, and like you can see those patterns on the chart when you really lay it all out, and it's really helpful to do that. So if you have a way to track your kid's sleep or your own sleep, whether it's through a smartwatch or whatever the ring is that you can wear, or even if it's just using a phone, or if you don't have any of that stuff, just write down what time your kid went to bed and roughly what time they woke up. Our kids will stay in bed a little bit, where they'll wake up at 4:45, but they won't come in our room until 5:15 because they're just kind of laying there. So it gets a little tricky, but as long as you can have like a rough estimate, it's super helpful, especially for your doctors when you're trying to diagnose or like reassess medications or treatment plans. It's really important to keep track of what the sleep is and not just make a mental note. Write it down and keep a diagram of it.
Well, and I think some parents are like, well, I didn't know my kid wasn't sleeping, and they never said anything or whatever, but that's why it needs to be part of the conversation. Say, how much sleep did you get? What time did you wake up? And, they'll say what time, because we're not shaming them for waking up early, or, hey, did you get right back to sleep when you woke up last night? We'll ask them, and they'll be like, I think so. Or sometimes they're like, yeah, I fell right back to sleep. Or, whatever the case may be, but just opening up that conversation, our kids don't feel like ashamed, or we don't say, how much sleep did you get? And they're like, I don't know, when they really did, because they don't want to tell us because they feel bad that they didn't get enough. Like, none of that. They just like, oh, this is what time I woke up. And like I was saying, like that, we just had these conversations like, hey, like I said the other day, I got terrible sleep because of the hailstorm, and I could not go back to sleep after 3 a.m. And so I said, hey guys, I didn't get great sleep last night, and I'm feeling very tired. So you know what I'm gonna have to do today? I'm gonna have to like listen to my body. I'm gonna drink more water. I'm gonna take pauses if I start to feel frustrated, because I feel like I'm probably gonna be more forgetful today. And if for some reason I mess up, I'm gonna apologize and I'm gonna do better. And I'm gonna try to go to bed a little bit earlier tonight to help. And that's something we talked to them about. If you didn't, oh, it doesn't sound like you got great sleep. Okay, if you start to feel frustrated today, make sure you take a beat, take a pause, deep breath, and then decide what you're gonna do. Don't just, yell at your friend at school, or, throw something because you're frustrated. Pause and be like, you know what? I didn't get enough sleep. I'm okay. I can do this. Or communicating, hey, I'm really, really frustrated and I can't calm down. Can you help me?
That's good modeling of what you should be conscious of. But we also kind of go through the checklist of coping mechanisms when we know that one of them really struggled in their sleep and we can tell they're a little tired. We basically do that same thing. Okay, what are the things that we can do? How can we step away from a situation? Change your body temperature, splash some cold water on your face if you need it, get under a warm blanket if you need it. Like, whatever those coping mechanisms are that you have in place, just running through the quick checklist as a reminder is super helpful for our kids.
Right. And I think, yes, finding the right combination of these tools takes time, but experiment and be kind to yourself. Like, if weighted blankets works for all these other people, but it doesn't work for you, you don't need to do it. If journaling does help you, if you brain dump right before bed because that gets it out of your brain and you're able to relax, do it. It doesn't work for me, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. Like, really listen to what's working for you and try to track it, at least for a little while. You won't have to track it forever, but track it so that you understand what actually works for you. And I'd love to hear from any of you what things that you've tried or things that work for you, because I think us like sharing information and offering, different tips, maybe it's something that someone else didn't think of and like, oh, I should try that. Like, I'd love to hear that. And just a reminder, ADHDers are creative problem solvers. If traditional sleep advice doesn't work, because it usually doesn't, it's a completely different animal going to bed and waking up with ADHD. Make your own version of a routine that works for you, pulling from all the different examples. But really, really make a system that works for you, that you're comfortable with, and you'll start to see doing that sleep hygiene, getting into that routine, how much different you feel and how much more in control of your symptoms that you are.
I want to say one more thing.
Get it?
CPTSD. Nailed it.
Bye.